It's the Daily Dog.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Thanks for being with me for another edition of the Daily Doug. I am happy that you are here today. Today we're not doing a song reaction. We'll have more of those coming up this week. Today is June the 6th, which is the anniversary of D-Day. And this morning while I was at church, I thought that it would be a nice gesture to include the Navy hymn during our prelude to our service. And as I was playing Eternal Father Strong to Save, this really wonderful old hymn, I remembered just how wonderful it is and how interesting harmonically it is. And I wanted to just take a brief few minutes to go through a Roman numeral analysis of this to show some of you how sequential modulations work. This is a hymn that has 12 measures in it, 12 full measures, and it has 3 4-measure phrases, and in each of those 3 phrases, we cadence in a different key. It's really a tightly compacted little piece that we can deconstruct and show how sequentially we can move from one key to another. I've talked a lot through these last several videos about how bands that we've been looking at will change keys and just go from one key right to another, right? That's a direct modulation. In my last video, I think we were doing a fourth of fifth, and also illumination theory with Dream Theater. I talked about pivot chord modulations, common chord modulations. But this one is a different type of modulation. It is sequential. And follow along for a few minutes. We're going to do a Roman numeral analysis of this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here we are. We're going to do one phrase at a time. I'm zoomed in so you can kind of see the music there. Eternal Father Strong to Save. This is the first phrase and how it sounds. So that chord that we ended on is a G, and we started in C. There's no key signature here, and so we start in C with a good old-fashioned 1 chord, right? That would be C, and then when we move to this next measure, we've got some moving notes up there, and there's our Fs, and that's the 4 chord, the F chord in the key of C. It goes back to the 1 chord there for that little arrival point in the middle of that phrase. Now, what happens is by the time we get to this place, this is the cadence. This is where we end up at the end of this phrase on the punctuation. You'll notice all 4 verses have punctuation there. We end on G, and by the time we get here, G is tonic. We've treated it with its leading tone, but we've also treated it with its leading tone here. We've established it here, and then we've confirmed it at the cadence here. So in that circumstance, this would then be a 1 chord in the key of G. This one through here is going to be a 5 chord with a 4-3 suspension. There's that G to that F sharp over the D chord. And then over here, if we're still working backwards as if G is our key, then this G chord, G and D, and there's a couple of B's in there, that would be a 1 chord in first inversion. Both of those guys would be passing tones. And then this one would also be a 1 chord in the key of G. So how do we get from this 1 chord in C to that 1 chord in G? Well, let's see, if this is 1 in the key of C and that's a G chord in the key of C, that's 5-6. We get to this chord here, this A minor 7 chord. That is an A minor 7. A, C sharp, G, and C. In the key of C, that is a 6 chord, but in the key of G, it is a 2 chord. And then if that's a 2 chord, that A minor chord there, then this D with the F sharp here becomes 5 chord to tonicize G, and then we finish that out in the key of G. Woo, too much information? Here's what it sounds like again, if I can play it right. Here we go. this chord, right? That's now 2, 5, 1, 1, do, ti, do, right? And that's that new bit. So on we go with the next phrase. Who bade the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. There's our next phrase ending in our next cadence. Now you'll notice that this is an E minor chord, right? So we were in G and now it's in E minor, and it moves there. And it moves there because, again, we've established the D sharp, the leading tone to E, and we've also established it here, and then we've also confirmed it at the cadence. That's really how we get these modulations to work. So sometimes it helps if I know where we end up, then I can work backwards from the end of that phrase. If I know that that's a 1 chord in the key of E minor, then this little bit here is sort of a cadential pattern, a suspended or embellished 5 chord. They're in the key of E, right? This chord that comes before it, the F sharp, you could call it a couple different things. You could call it an A minor chord, or you could call it F sharp diminished. Either one, it's a predominant chord. If I was using the F sharp, that would be 2, and that would be diminished 6. First inversion F sharp diminished chord. This chord here with those 2 E's there and the G and the B is going to be an E minor chord in first inversion. We also get an E minor chord in root position there. Then this passing chord in the middle, we've got D sharps and F sharps and A. That's a D sharp diminished triad in the key of E. That is 7 diminished, and it's in first inversion. Okay? That would make this chord over here, the B chord with the D sharp there, the 5 chord in the key of E. Now, here's what this next phrase sounds like, starting from this little bit. Let's see, how does that go? What is that chord? There we go. Right, so we end with that note being do, and here's the fun thing. So we ended in G here. This measure and this measure is where the sequence actually happens, this pattern that repeats. This chord is a G7 chord in first inversion, and it resolves to C there. The very next chord is an A7 chord, also in first inversion, and it resolves to D. This G goes up a step to that A, and that C goes up a step to that D. This entire little spot there doesn't really work in any one key, but the pattern is sequential, and it moves us to this spot, and that D can become like subtonic in the key of E, and then we get the rest of these that lead us to that E minor resolution. Cool, so from the very beginning, we get C, it's 4 chord, then we're on the move, tonicizing G, and then confirming G at the cadence. Then we're on the move again, G7 goes to C, then A7 goes to D, then the D steps up to D sharp, we tonicize E, we tonicize it again, and then we tonicize it again. That chord is an E minor chord. It's not the 3 chord. If we called it the 3 chord, that would mean that C is still acting as tonic, and it's really not. E is a tonic chord there. Okay? How can we see? Can you see? I'm going to scroll down or zoom down a little bit more. There we go, so you can see that a little bit better. Now, we've got one more verse. This looks all funky in through here, but if I go to the very end, it looks like I've got a C chord there, right? And that's tonic at the end. And if I go back a little bit, and then, like I said, work backwards, that's your 5-7 in the key of C. That's going to be kind of a cadential pattern, actually, isn't it? 6-4, and then or 8-6-4, and then something like that. This D dominant 7th chord is interesting. That's going to be a secondary dominant. In the key of C, D is dominant to G, so that's going to be the 5. It's in what inversion? It's in first inversion, so 5-6-5 of 5, the dominant of the dominant, and that C chord is 1. Now, check this out. Here's another sequential pattern that happens over these 2 measures. Sorry if I'm moving that on you too much. Once we landed in E minor here, that E minor chord, that note in the E minor chord turns into the 3rd of that chord. This C7 resolves to F, and then up a step, this D7 chord resolves to G, right? So it's hard to give Roman numerals to these because they're functioning outside of a key, right? So this C7 resolves to F, and then just like up here where this happened and then this happened up a step, C7 goes to F, and then D7 goes to G, just like that, right? And once we set that up, that G then becomes the dominant for the key of C to finish out. That last phrase, oh, then the D7 goes to G, then G6-5, and then 1-5-6-5 of 5 to an extended dominant. Right? So at the very beginning we have C, then we're moving to G, and that's a cadence in G. Then we're on the move again, up a step. Then it goes back on the move, C to F, then the D to G, then 5-7 of 5-6-5 to 1. It's a very weighty and harmonically interesting tune that allows us to move between these 3 different keys. It's just wonderful, isn't it? Absolutely wonderful. Eternal Father, strong to save. I love doing these little analyses because, one, it keeps my brain engaged, and it also can give me a clear indication of why the music affects me emotionally the way that it does. It's odd, or it's unique, relatively unique, or rare that in a 12 measure span we get this many keys, right? It's got, like I said, it's got 12 measures, it's got 3 4-measure phrases. We start in C with the first phrase, it ends in G. The second phrase starts in G, ends in E minor. The third phrase starts in E minor, ends back in C, right? So we're lifting up C, E, and G, the 3 members of the C major triad, as individual keys within these 12 measures. I think that the overall sound of the piece, of the hymn, is one that is sturdy, which is why it has been adopted by military interests, the Navy especially, but it also allows us to have multiple viewpoints because of the different key areas that it highlights. Remember, the military is kind of the ultimate equalizer. The military doesn't care, really, whether you're rich or poor or white or black. You're just one among the ranks. And everybody has to get along, but everybody has these their own voices that lead to this. And this particular hymn, with it moving to all of these different areas, is the ultimate sort of bringing us together sort of hymn, and hoping to, it's prayerful, it's solemn, but it's also deep and reverential at the same time, and it allows for, in the harmonies, for multiple types of perspectives and voices to be heard. And it starts in C, ends back in C, and it's sort of a whirlwind through a little hymn, and it's one of my favorites. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a little bit about sequential modulations and how they work. Sequences are difficult sometimes to put Roman numerals on or to analyze because they don't really fit in any key, and that's kind of the point of them. The pattern takes over, and the pattern becomes more important than what key it's in or not. And then where the pattern breaks kind of determines where you're going to be, what key area you're going to be in. So fun stuff. I had fun doing that. I hope you did too. I haven't done a whole lot of these truly sort of teaching theory, how to do harmonic analysis before. If you'd like this content, let me know, and I can try to include more on the channel in the coming days. Thanks so much for being with me and for celebrating and paying homage to the anniversary of D-Day, and we will see you next time on another edition of The Daily Doug.